Hi everybody, I'm Igor Smirnov, International Grandmaster and the chess coach. Today I will continue answering the questions that you sent me recently. By the way, recently I've already recorded one lesson with my answers, you can see it right here. If you missed this lesson for some reasons, it would be better to watch it first and after that get back to the current lesson. Okay, now let's move on and start observing the questions itself. Here are the comments. Let's start from this one. I'll give you a few seconds to read this question. When you move your A or H pawn forward, you activate the rook which stands behind. Let's imagine how it may look like in the end. Of course, this is an imaginary situation just to illustrate the idea. Now if you take a look at the rooks, the white's rook on a1 and the black's one on a8, you will see that the white's rook is quite active, while the black's rook is totally passive. Of course, this situation is very advantageous for white. In addition to that, there is one more argument for advancing your a-pawn. This a6 pawn invaded into black's territory and may then cause some problems for black. Let me show you how it may look like in reality. We can see that white advanced his a-pawn forward, and now it really causes some problems for black, because from one hand white is going to push it forward with a6, forcing black's bishop to go back to its initial square. Or maybe white can take on b6, opening the a-file, or white can just keep the tension and wait for a better moment. Perhaps you've heard an idea that sometimes a threat can be stronger than its execution. White can keep a few ideas in mind and then use the best one depending on the specific situation. And this position can be quite annoying for black because all the time he has to consider those attacking possibilities of white. Let's say if black just ignores this pawn and continues his development, white can push a6. Now the bishop cannot go to c6 because after d5 it will be trapped. The bishop will have to go back to its initial position, which is certainly not very good. And now, let's say after bishop b5 or any other move, we can see that black's pieces of the queen side are quite locked there and it's difficult to activate them somehow. Perhaps it's not what black really wants. Let's make a few moves back. Let's think what black can do in order to prevent this advancement of white's pawn to a6. Of course, black can take on a5, but in that case he will break his pawn structure. White will recapture with the rook, and now black is left with his weak pawns on a7 and c7, and in the middle game or even in the end game it may become a big problem. By the way, we still can see that the white's rook on a5 is of course much more active than black's pawn on a8. So this is another advantage of advancement of white's a-pawn. Black can try a6 in order to block this white's pawn on a5, but still after an exchange the same thing will happen. Black will still have some weak pawns on the queen side and white already put some pressure on that. For this reason black will have to keep his rook and bishop on a8 and b7 just to hold his pawn. And it's also not very good because you wanna use your pieces to some more active purposes. Okay, let's go back once again. One idea which is generally considered to be the best in such situations for black is to move his a8 rook somewhere and give an escape path for the bishop. For this purpose black can move the rook to b8 or to c8. After that, if white tries to advance the pawn, it will not be that dangerous for black because the bishop can simply go back to a8 and we keep the bishop on this long diagonal and it remains to be active. In that case, if black moves the rook to b8, white can choose another plan. He can switch to opening the a file, take a takes, and then invade with rook to a7, and this rook will be quite unpleasant for black. It puts pressure on the black's bishop and indirectly to all those pawns on the south rank, and of course it can be a powerful attacking resource in the future. And hopefully you understand that I'm now not analyzing this particular position or this particular opening. It's just a general idea that is applicable in the middle game or in any other position. Now I can answer your question. You've asked me why black often replies a5 in reply to white's move a4. You can see that sometimes this pawn on a5 may become very unpleasant for black, and that's why on the previous move black may just block this pawn on a4 by playing a5. And in that case, he keeps the normal situation and there is no way for white to advance further. By the way, in positions like these, sometimes it's better to place the pawn on a6 instead of a5, because here if you move a5, the b5 square will be quite weak in the black's position and white can occupy it with a knight or with a bishop, and then the only way for black to push away that bishop will be to play c6. But in that case he will close his b7 bishop and weaken his pawn structure for a bit. It's not very favorable for black, and that's why in such situations pretty often black should play more flexible move a6. He's also blocking the white's pawn, and now if white pushes a5, black will be able to reply b5, and everything is good with him. Now we can make the final conclusion about that advancement of a or h pawn. Black may decide to block this pawn by playing a5 for two reasons. The first reason is not to allow white to gain more space and activate his rook, which stands behind that pawn. This is one reason. And the second reason is that if white can advance his pawn on the opponent's half of the board, it may become an attacking resource, which is quite annoying for black. In order to prevent it, black may advance his pawn to a5 or sometimes to a6. Of course, I'm not saying that you should always play a5 in such positions, it will depend on the specific situation, but now you know the reasons of this move. Now I've opened the next question. This one is from Dominic. I'll give you a few seconds to read the question. Basically, it's about an analysis of our own games. This is a very good question indeed. Analysis of your own games is one of the typical ways for improvement. That's why I'll certainly try to answer this question very well. Okay, let's start from the very beginning. When you're analyzing your games, you compare your moves, which was played in the game, with correct moves, the best moves, which should have been played. And if you notice the difference, if you notice that at some positions you made wrong decisions, you start asking yourself a few important questions. The first question, why it happened? What was wrong in your thinking system that caused that mistake? And after that, you try to make a conclusion for the future. You try to find the solution on how you should act and how you should think in such situations in the future, so that you can find the proper way if you face a similar position in the future again and again. So that's in general the process of analysis of your own games. You compare your moves with correct moves and ask yourself why mistakes happened and how to eliminate them in the future. Of course, there is one big problem here. This problem happens not only for you, but for absolutely any player in the world. When you are analyzing your own moves, they seem natural for you. Even if you did something wrong, you will not recognize it. That's why while analyzing your games, you definitely need to have one more person which is stronger than you that will be able to show you your mistakes. Here a trainer really can help a lot. If you don't have a trainer, you can use a computer for the same purpose. Computer is very strong. It will definitely demonstrate you all the mistakes that you made. Although there is one problem with the computer, it shows you correct lines, but it does not explain to you why these moves are correct and how you can find them in your games. That's indeed the problem. If you want to know more about your thinking process and how to improve it, you may like to study my courses. They are dedicated to this topic and you will find a lot of information there. Especially for you, I would recommend the course The Grandmaster Secrets or Self-Taught Grandmaster, and there you will also find very detailed instructions on how to analyze your games effectively. Now let me read your comment once again. I'll see if there are any other specific questions here. As for making conclusions about the whole game, well, of course, as you said, the good trainer can make that conclusion pretty quickly, without any specific things. But if you do it yourself, well, the simple way is just, when you analyze your game, place question marks after every mistake that you made, and at the end, look at all the question marks that you detected in this game, and try to make the general conclusion at what type of situation your moves were wrong. Maybe you make mistakes when you are under attack and you have problems with defense. Maybe most often your mistakes happen in closed positions. In that case, of course, you'll need to study that topic better. Thus, this is the proper way. You set question mark after every wrong move that you made. At the end of analysis of one game, you sum up. You try to find similarity of your mistakes. And also you do the same after you analyzed all the games of one particular tournament. So then you make the general summary about the weaknesses that caused your troubles in this tournament. By the way, right after that you've stated that I regularly get into time trouble straight out of the opening despite of playing the same variations for a long time. When you spend a long time for thinking, it clearly demonstrates your weakness here. So it is not caused by the position, by the critical position or something like that. It's not the case. It demonstrates your weakness, because another player would be able to handle the same position quickly and flawlessly. So when you spend a long time, it means that you're lacking in skills here, and really you may just pay attention to those positions where you spend a lot of time. They demonstrate your weaknesses. By the way, for this reason, it's useful to analyze blitz games. In a blitz game you don't have time to think, and you cannot cover your weaknesses. If you have a certain weakness, you will demonstrate it very clearly. And also then you say that you take a lot of time in positions where you need to make a decision. It reminds me on one more question that another student published here, so let me find it. Here's another similar question. When analyzing and trying to find my next move, often I find that I cannot decide between two different moves. Maybe I cannot calculate well enough to find the difference, or maybe the difference is subtle. Very often during a chess game you can see that there are a few possible moves and all of them look approximately equal, and you may be unsure which one to choose. Let's try to analyze it using a concrete example. We can see a pretty complex position. It is the 14 move, and it looks like a branching point for black. Black needs to make a decision. He can take white's bishop on d3, maybe take white's knight on f3, or just continue his development with knight to c6, or even the move which he played in the game, bishop to e4. This decision seems to be quite difficult because you need to analyze a lot of different positions and it may require a lot of time. However, if you have a look at all of these moves, you will see that in fact they do not change the evaluation of the whole position significantly. Currently the situation is approximately equal. None of opponents has any serious advantage. If black goes any of these moves like knight c6, the situation still remains approximately equal. You can take knight takes d3, queen takes, again, nothing serious happened, and it's still approximately equal. By the way, bishop e4 does not win the exchange because there is an option of queen d4, threatening mate, and black has no time to take the rook. In such situations, it makes no sense to think for too long. You have a few options, they all are possible, they all are fine and approximately equal. Just use any of them. If you're not sure which one to pick, I recommend that you use your intuition. Choose the move that came to your mind first. This is a very practical recommendation, it has been tested by a lot of players. Really, the move that came to your mind first when you just looked at the position for the first side, very often it is the best option. Now let's skip this position and go through the whole game quickly in order to determine which moments were really crucial in this game and which positions determined their final result. It is the 27th move. Black is up a pawn now, which determines his advantage. However, he played queen to d5 and blundered his extra pawn because now white can play bishop takes a7, deflecting the rook and taking the pawn back. Instead of queen d5, black could play any other retreat of his queen, let's say like queen a4 or something like that, and black keeps his extra pawn and black is playing for a win. There is no way for white to put any additional attack on this knight on c4, that's why in fact there is no danger for black here. Still, if we come back to the actual game, after queen d5, white took back that extra pawn and after that he got the advantage because he has the passed pawn on a file while the black's passed pawn on the e file is completely blocked. This determines white's advantage, although still black should be able to hold a draw in this game because white's king is exposed and the overall quantity of pawns is pretty low, so it should be possible for black to hold a draw. However, after that he played not very well. He removed the king from the center, which is not very good for the end game, and after that he traded queens. Generally this is a good idea, but in this particular position he let it white to place his rook behind his passed pawn and now it can just go forward, and that's why, as a result, white won this game afterwards. At the end we may conclude what caused the final result of this game. Black's loss was determined by his tactical blunder when he blundered his a-pawn, and after that by his bad moves in an endgame stage. This was the reason for the black's loss here. If we come back to that position where black needed to make a decision in the opening, we can see that its importance for the overall game was very low. That's why I do not recommend that you spend too much time in such positions. In conclusion, sometimes perfectionism can be counterproductive for a chess player. Although it may sound strange, but your main task is not to find perfect, brilliant moves. Your main task is to play normal moves and avoid big mistakes. In order to avoid blunders, you need to play reasonably quickly and avoid being in a time trouble. In addition to that, let me make one general note regarding an analysis of your own game. This method of improvement becomes very important for advanced players. If we talk about international masters or grandmasters, they may spend a lot of their time on the opening preparation and on analysis of their own games, and this will be correct for sure. But for the beginner player or for an intermediate player, that approach would be wrong. Because first you need to study what I call a chess school, a comprehensive knowledge about chess. You need to master all the main strategic and tactical motifs, to build a good opening repertoire and to know all typical endgame positions. Most importantly, you need to have a good system of thinking to train it and to automate it. Only after that, you may start playing and detecting mistakes in your play and trying to improve you in a certain specific component of your play. Before that, the analysis of your own game actually may be useless. Let me show you what I mean. In a big database, I've chosen very randomly a game of a player with a rating around 2100s. He's playing black. Let's go very quickly through this game and try to evaluate his move and try to analyze his game, as we may say. I'll go through the game very quickly. Well, first of all, I can say that the Dutch defense is not suitable for this level of player. Also, we can see that strange approach for making such a lot of pawn moves in an early opening stage instead of development. And then black is somewhat trying to attack, but it's gonna be very difficult to attack when you have just a few pieces in the game. So after that, black played bishop g4, perhaps provoking white to advance his pawns, but it's good for white. Why not? White will gain more space. In the end of this operation, black just lost a pawn. 94, knight h7. Once again, we can see that all the black's pieces are standing backward, and in addition to that, he is down a pawn, so now he is losing completely. White played d5. Oh, by the way, I think there was a tactical trick. Probably. I'm not sure, we need to calculate, but perhaps white could play f4, and then after black takes with something, try to exploit maybe knight takes g5 or knight takes d6, and I want to play bishop d5 then. Let's say something like this. Perhaps in this line white was just winning. Maybe not, I'm not sure, I will not analyze it right now, so now it's not the topic of our lesson. Let's just move forward. d5, knight b6, bishop d7. Okay, now black started to play more reasonably. And he got a more normal position than it was before. But after that, strange things happened, and black became completely loser once again. In the end, he lost this game. Now, let's try to make a final conclusion about this black player and his weaknesses. This is a bit funny question because, in fact, this whole game was pretty much wrong for him. Well, sometimes he played interesting ideas, but I mean, he played quite haphazardly. He knows some ideas about chess, he knows some things about attack, about positional sacrifice, but in the other positions he plays completely wrong. So I mean, with these random moves, of course it's very difficult to expect good results. And for this player, I would say that it's too early to analyze his games, because he's just playing wrong. He's not even wrong, he's playing randomly. He knows something about chess and he has huge gaps in many areas. So for this player, I would just recommend to study a normal system of thinking. It can be found in one of my base courses like the Grandmaster Secrets or the Grandmaster's Positional Understanding. When I call it a base course, some people think that it is for beginners, but in fact you see that this guy is 2100s of rating and he's completely missing those basics. That's why for him it is just obligatory to study that course, and that's what I would recommend for him to do. And analysis of his game is just not suitable right now. It may become suitable somewhere in the future after he starts playing in a normal chess. To end my answer on this question, do not overestimate the importance of analysis of your own game. It becomes really important and really crucial on the level of strong players. Before that, you may do that, and this may be useful, but don't bother yourself too much with that. Okay, let's go to the next questions. Here is the next one. Please tell us what is your honest opinion about a certain chess school. Thank you for your answer. Well, I don't want to, take part in those discussions about different chess tutorials, because there are thousands of tutorials out there, different books, DVDs, various authors and training methods, and this can be an endless discussion. I can only tell you a few general things here. The one thing, based from my own experience, at a certain point I realized that collecting of a lot of different chess knowledge does not help. Like, if I talk about my own experience, at the beginning my chess advancement was pretty quick. I won a couple of tournaments and I became International Master at 13, but after that I pretty much stuck for some years, And during that time, I've been reading a lot of different chess books and I've been studying a lot of different materials, but it did not help me to improve my rating. It became pretty similar all the time. And at that point, I realized that if you just, learn more knowledge, collect them, it does not make you stronger. There is a very simple test. You read a certain chess book or study a certain chess lesson, and after that you can go and play, for example in the internet blitz, and you can see whether there was any improvement in your game or not. And if you see that your rating is still the same, then there is no improvement and reading of that book was useless. That book may look very clever, it may look like it contains a lot of information, but at the end of the day you see that in practice it gives you nothing. That's why I'm often criticizing different chess tutorials, because from my point of view, in practice they will give you nothing. I think that you need to improve your system of thinking, and that is the most important thing. Another general note that I may say here is that you need to have a certain focus. If you start learning too many different materials at the same time or within a short period of time, you will mix up the things completely in your head and it will work against you. From the beginning, maybe you had some doubts and some questions about chess, and after you study a lot of various approaches, it will just mix up the things completely. So don't do that. Focus yourself on a certain training method, choose what you like best, focus on it for some time, and get result from it. By the way, I can see that there is also one reply to your comment. You may read it as well. And once again, let me thank everybody who placed their opinion, their answers to the questions. It was very useful for our students. Thank you for that. Okay, now let's go to the next questions. Now I've opened the next question. Hi sir, my rating is near to 2000s. How can I improve my standard as well as my rating? Well, obviously you need to improve your level of play and your rating will be improved automatically, just simultaneously. This is a general question, it's difficult to answer in a few minutes. You may like to study the course Self-Taught Grandmaster. There I presented everything that you need to know about chess training and a complete training program from the beginner till the level of an expert player of International Master and even Grandmaster, so there you can find everything in big details. Here we also can see that one person has already provided you a certain answer. He said that this is for expert level players, but it may be suitable for you as well. Okay, let me just provide my quick feedback about those propositions. So first, improve your evaluation function. Well, I think you need to improve your understanding of chess, because how can you improve your evaluation alone? You need to improve your overall understanding of the chess game, and then it will happen automatically. You'll be able to evaluate positions easily. The next item, practice time management. Yeah, of course, it is always useful, especially if you have time troubles. I've made a couple of lessons about that. Let me just pause the video. I'll paste the links to those appropriate lessons. I pasted the links to appropriate lessons about time management below. You might like to study them. Let's go next. The third item, study master annotated games from 1000 best games of chess informant. This is a good resource for sure. Yeah, they selected really good games. One problem there is that those games don't have text comments. You will only find a lot of variations there, and they think that for your level it's maybe a problem. Actually, you will need to use your computer extensively while going through those games in order to understand what happened. And of course it would be better if you study together with a strong player or with your chess coach, who will just be able to explain to you the ideas of those moves, and then it can become really useful. Next, you can make tactics. Yeah, that's for sure, of course you can make tactics, just don't be obsessed with that idea, because I know some players who spend a lot of time solving different tactical puzzles and they have already solved thousands of them and they are still weak players. That's quite amusing. So obviously this training method did not brought them good improvement. So it's fine to allocate some time for doing tactics, but not too much. Okay, it's just my quick thoughts to make sure that your training will be effective, but in general, I would rather suggest that you study Self-Taught Grandmaster course and just follow that training program. That would be easier for you. Okay, let's go forward. Now let's have a look at this question. I'll give you a few seconds to read it. This is about the b3 opening, which I've presented some time ago. First of all, I'm very glad that you enjoyed this opening and that it brought you good results. That's excellent. At the same time, let me warn you, I definitely do not suggest that you make it your main opening weapon and you play it all the time. It may be good if you play it from time to time, especially in quick games. Yeah, it can work perfectly, but still you need to play normal openings as well. You cannot avoid that. When you play a certain opening scheme solely, it may save your time on opening study, but at the same time, you limit your chess experience and that will damage your chess progress. Let me show you what I mean. Some players prefer to study a certain opening scheme and then just play it over and over again. It can be this b3 opening or it can be anything else. For example, I know quite a lot of players that tries to use this system for black with bishop d7 and then bishop to c6, and they like it because it's very simple. They play the same moves all the time. Bishop goes to c6, then after anything they continue with knight d7, knight f6, something like that, bishop e7, and they can play these moves no matter what white do. Then in the future, pretty often they exchange that bishop, play c6 and get that passive but solid position. It's possible to do that, but there is a big drawback. When you play the same type of position all the time, you limit your chess experience. You limit the quantity of strategic and tactical ideas that you practice. You will not be aware of different types of positions. And thus, ultimately, you will limit your chess progress. Don't do that. You need to play normal classical openings and you need to play various openings. The classical openings are comprehensive. Okay, let's just have a look at another opening. It is Rilo Pass, one of the most classical openings, and you can see that it can lead to many different types of positions. For example, it can lead to positions with closed center, a variation like this, then d4, and on the next move white can push d5, and that will be a closed situation in the center. Something similar may happen in King's Indian defense, for example, so that will be one game. Instead of that, white can exchange pawns in the center, and that will be another game, a static center. Both players will try to occupy those central squares. For white it will be d5 and f5, and that's another position and another plan. In addition to that, black can exchange on d4 instead, and that will be rather open center, or it may happen in the future with an open game and many tactical possibilities for both players. Sometimes black can sacrifice a pawn. If we make a few moves back, instead of d6, black can sometimes play d5, sacrifice a pawn, that pawn on e5, but get an active play, and he will play in a gambit style. Also, in some positions, white does not play d4, and he just instead plays d3 and keeps this unclear situation in the center with many possibilities for both opponents. You can see that this position is not this position, but this opening is really comprehensive. It contains a lot of different possibilities, different ideas, different plans for both players. And if you play it, you will get a huge experience, and it will improve you as a chess player. That's why I'm saying that you need to play normal classical openings. It will not only improve your opening knowledge, but will also improve your overall chess understanding. I've added the links to the lessons about this B3 opening below the comment. If you haven't studied all these lessons yet, you may do it now, and this opening may become a menacing weapon and an unpleasant surprise for your opponent. In some separate games you may use it, but as I said before, it can be an additional opening weapon for you. And also you need to have the main solid opening repertoire that you're going to play. Of course, I will be providing new opening lessons for you. Actually, that's what I've been working on during the past 5-6 months. Together with our team of Remote Chess Academy, we're developing a new opening course, and hopefully it will be ready at the end of October. So I think it's gonna happen pretty soon. At the end of these months, it'll be ready. And after that, you'll get a lot of information. So there you'll find general information about how to play openings, how to find correct opening moves yourself, as well as some specific analysis of different opening lines that will work well for you for sure. Okay, now let's see what else do we have here. Well, perhaps we can finish for today, because I see that there are really a lot of comments are still remain. I'll try to answer them all one by one. As you can see, that's a pretty long work. Anyway, I hope that it is useful for you, and I will keep doing it piece by piece. Thanks for your attention. I wish you all the best. So we're finishing for today, but of course in the future I will continue recording next lessons in reply to your questions. Thanks again. Goodbye.